all. Stacy the Blackfeather Intuitive. Welcome to Blackfeather Crime. Around here, we're all about curiosity, clarity, and courage, understanding ourselves, each other, and the beautifully messy mystery of being human. Come with your questions, leave with understanding, and maybe a little lighter than before. Imagine waking up with no name, no history, and no idea where you belong. Today, we're exploring the mystery of Benjamin Kyle and asking what his missing past might reveal about the man he was before anyone knew his name. And if you like this type of content where we blend true crime with that intuitive insight, please like, subscribe, and comment below with any suggestions for cases that you might be solving. I would love to be able to tune in that way for you. So, why this case matters so much? This case of Benjamin Kyle touches something profoundly human. How much of our identity comes from memory, and how much comes from the story we choose to tell? So, just giving you a little bit of a heads up, we did find out who this individual is, but it's a very interesting case that spans decades. It talks about memory and psychological trauma, homelessness and social invisibility, the human need for a name and history, the ethics of investigating someone who may be cognitively vulnerable, the difference between inconsistency and deception, and what happens when documentary storytelling transforms an apparent victim into a possible suspect. It also reveals how easily a person can disappear from ordinary systems without physically vanishing. For years, Kyle was sometimes described as the only missing person whose location was known. Authorities knew where he was, but not who he was. His case became a remarkable early demonstration of genetic genealogy's power to restore an identity where fingerprints, media exposure, and conventional records had failed. So let's talk a little bit about the case. On August 31st, 2004, a Burger King employee in Richmond Hill, Georgia, discovered an unclothed, injured, and sunburned man near the restaurant's dumpsters. He was covered in fire ant bites and appeared very confused. He had no identification and could not provide his name. Hospital personnel initially called him BD Doe, referring to Burger King. BK Doe. Sorry, I didn't mean BD. BK Doe. He later adapted the name Benjamin Kyle using the unusual spelling with 2 A's. Kyle said he had very limited autobiographical memory. He could recall general knowledge and fragments of places, restaurants, and events, but said he could not remember his identity, family, or the path that brought him to Georgia. Doctors and caregivers disagreed over whether his condition was genuine. Some found his distress credible. At least one treating physician reportedly suspected he might be feigning selective memory loss. For more than a decade, police attempted to identify him. The FBI checked fingerprints, journalists circulated his photograph, amateur investigators followed clues, and genealogists analyzed his DNA. In 2015, genetic genealogist Cece Moore and her team identified him as William Burgess Powell, born August 29, 1948, in Lafayette, Indiana. Powell had left Indiana in 1976, and his family had not heard from him for decades. But that discovery opened a second mystery. Records placed Powell in Colorado through the early 1980s. His reported Social Security earnings then stopped around 1983. From approximately 83 until 2004, researchers found almost none of the ordinary documentation expected from an adult life. No established address history. Sorry, I'm mixing my words today. No conventional employment trail, no marriage or divorce record, no loans, no known criminal records, and few identifiable personal relationships. The identity mystery had been solved, but the life mystery had not. So let's talk about this really long timeline. August 29th, 1948, William Burgess Powell is born in Lafayette, Indiana. His later insistence that August 29th was his birthday became one of the few personal details he consistently remembered correctly. 1960s into the early 70s, Powell grows up in Indiana and later works a series of jobs, reportedly including work in restaurants, a warehouse, a theater, and other service positions. Accounts of his childhood describe instability, family dysfunction, and isolation, although interpretations of those experiences differ, which one could argue that memory is not always a reliable tool. I remember things very differently in childhood than my sister does, and yet we both experience the same, situations. So, that kind of just leaves a little to be desired. 1976, Powell abruptly leaves the trailer where he'd been living on another family's property. His belongings remain behind. His car is later found abandoned near the Oakdale Dam. His brother reports him missing, but police eventually locate Powell alive in Boulder, Colorado, where he is working as a cook. He apparently chooses not to return to Indiana or resume regular contact with his family. 1978 to 1983. Social Security records indicate Powell works at several restaurants in the Denver area. After approximately 1983, his conventional earnings trail stops. 1983 to 2004, the central missing period. Public record researchers have been unable to produce a clear, continuous account of where he lived, how he supported himself, who he knew, or what name he may have used. The absence of records is unusual, but it is not itself proof of criminal activity. He may have been homeless, itinerant, paid in cash, or living under another name. August 31st of 2004, Powell is discovered behind the Burger King in Richmond Hill, Georgia. He has no identification and says he cannot remember who he is. In 2005, while receiving services in Savannah, he adopts the name Benjamin Kyle. In 2007 through to 2014, his case receives increasing attention. Journalists, former investigators, television programs, volunteers, and genetic genealogists attempt to identify him. His fingerprints reportedly failed to produce a match in conventional databases. September of 2015, the genetic genealogy finally identifies Kyle as William Burgess Powell. Powell confirms that many biographical details uncovered by researchers align with limited memories he had retained. In 2016, filmmakers working with Powell reportedly lose contact with him near the end of the year. They say he later left the job and residence through which they had been able to locate him. In May of 2026, Investigation Discovery releases the 4-part docuseries, The Many Lives of Benjamin Kyle, also made available through HBO Max. The series reframes the case by focusing on inconsistencies in Powell's account, his reactions to the filmmakers, his missing years, alleged associations in Lafayette, and theories involving unresolved crimes. Those theories still to this day remain unproven. And at present, the filmmakers say they have not confirmed Powell's current location. They believe he may still be in or near Lafayette, but describe that as an informed belief rather than verified fact. Powell would now be 77 years old. No public agency has announced that he is wanted for a crime, and no publicly released evidence has connected him conclusively to a homicide or organized crime activity. Wow, this one's interesting. So for the record, I have not watched any of this documentary. So this reading today is going to be what I call a cold reading. I don't know anything about this aside from what I am, the information that I'm giving to you. So this should be interesting to see what information comes through from our guides. So key people: Benjamin Kyle, who is also William Burgess Powell. He's the man at the center of the case. He has consistently maintained that he experienced profound autobiographical memory loss. The spelling Benjamin, with that A, Benjamin, is intentional and is the name he chose for himself before his birth identity was discovered. C.C. Moore is the genetic geologist whose team helped identify Kyle as William Burgess Powell in 2015. The identification was achieved by using DNA matches to construct family relationships and narrow possible candidates. Catherine Slater is a nurse and early advocate who worked to help Kyle establish an identity and reconnect with his past. Her efforts helped bring sustained attention to his case. Furman Powell Jr. is William's brother. His recollections helped reconstruct the Powell family history and William's disappearance from Indiana. And Eric and Shannon Evangelista are the filmmakers behind The Many Lives of Benjamin Kyle. They began from the position of wanting to reunite Kyle with his family. Over years of filming, they became increasingly skeptical of aspects of his story and began exploring more troubling possibilities. Ken Maxwell is a retired FBI official who participated in the documentary investigation. He questioned whether Powell's account and behavior were consistent with genuine memory loss and helped examine his missing years and possible associations. Those opinions are investigative interpretations, not judicial findings. So it's important here to note that there's a lot of suspicious things coming up, but nothing that is provable. And then we have the medical professionals who evaluated Kyle. Some reportedly diagnosed or accepted retrograde amnesia. Others suspected that he was selectively withholding information or feigning the condition. There does not appear to be one universally accepted medical conclusion publicly available. So let's get to the questions. And this one is really kind of bizarre. And just from a Spidey Sense perspective, before I kind of dive into the questions that we're going to explore today, I do feel that he did suffer a particular trauma. I do feel that there is legitimate amnesia, but I also want to say to you that I feel that more of his memories have actually returned to him and started coming back to him over the years, and he just chose to adopt this new identity. I feel that a lot of his interest in finding out who he is was feigned. I don't believe that he necessarily wanted all of the truth to come out. I also am seeing that he suffered a major brain injury as well. So being hit on the head, having a closed head injury. And I feel that that also has contributed to a lot of things that are coming up. I don't know if this is one of the questions we're going to explore, but I am also seeing that his reason for leaving back in the 70s, that home that he was living with, I feel that he was trying to have an affair with one of the members of the family. And when that was discovered, he realized that he had to leave. Otherwise, he was going to be in danger. I feel like who he was before all of this amnesia was, I want to say he was making some questionable choices in his life. I wouldn't say he was a bad person, but I wouldn't necessarily say he was choosing all of the choices that maybe a person who is intent on being a good person would choose. So I want to say maybe a little bit morally ambiguous and a little bit out for his own gain. So if that is kind of fundamentally what you're starting off with, when you have some kind of a traumatic brain injury or you have some kind of a traumatic event that causes amnesia, it would stand to reason that some of your personality is, on a subconscious level is kind of formed in that way. And it might shift you. It might change you a little bit. Certain things are going to stay the same and other things might shift up. So it kind of makes sense that he might have some confusion about who he is. All right, to the questions. Researchers have never been able to fully account for roughly 21 years of William Powell's life before he was discovered behind the Burger King in 2004. That missing period remains the greatest factual gap in the case. So where was William Powell during these missing years? And what is the most important truth about that period of his life that has yet to be understood? I see him living sort of a kind of an underground life. I see him being a bit transient, living on the streets, living in shelters. I see him being kind of consistently on the run, like never staying in one city for a long period of time. I see him relying on the kindness of strangers to sort of get by. I do feel that he would pick up odd jobs from time to time. I do feel that he was not opposed to crime. I feel that he eventually ran into someone that kind of, I want to say, like picked him up off the street type thing, to give him a bunch of money to do some kind of break-ins, small stealing small things. It was good that he was off the radar. That was the whole point and the whole purpose. It was that he really did not have an identity, and that worked well for the purposes of this individual. I feel it's a male individual. I'm seeing sort of kind of balding hair, dark hair, balding hair, kind of a bigger guy, oval shaped face. I see this individual having a public face that was somewhat prominent, but leading sort of a double life. I feel that this work that he was enlisting Benjamin Kyle in doing was for himself. So it's not like a middleman or he was doing it on behalf of someone else. He was actually paying Kyle to take care of these particular things for him. Feels like it was kind of like a smaller operation, and that's part of how this particular man worked. Is he wasn't part of a big crime syndicate. He was kind of small potatoes and wanted to keep it as such. Again, double life. And I feel that Benjamin Kyle was really into the money, and really, again, I feel a lot of like moral ambiguity. So, okay, you want me to do this and you're going to pay me $10,000 to do it? Okay, I can do that. But the agreement was always that it had to be kind of under the radar. It had to be understated. Nothing too ostentatious. And I feel like it was agreed upon that he would get money, he would get paid for the things that he was doing, but he still had to maintain a very low profile in his life. So I feel like he had transiency until he met this person. And then when he met this person, I'm feeling kind of a larger city. I'm seeing, it's interesting. I'm seeing like Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, could be Philadelphia, but I'm definitely feeling like he continued to live that lifestyle, but now he had access to money. Now he had access to do things, get things done. He found a bit of a purpose for himself, and he was perfectly content to live that way. That was the agreement, to live under the radar. Interesting. The most important truth about that period of his life, I think we've hit it. His purpose was to live under the radar, and he was fine to do this, but he did not want to be affiliated with an organization. I feel with like his closed head injury, he also did not want to have to be beholden to anyone. It was like, not showing up for work at the same time every day. That was just not how he was going to do things. But I do feel that he did keep different odd jobs. Feels like mechanic or building superintendent or fixing things, doing things with his hands. So he really kept a low profile. Okay, William Powell was found injured, unclothed, without identification, and claiming he no longer knew who he was. The events immediately leading up to that discovery had never been clearly established. So, what truly happened before William Powell was found behind the Burger King? And how did that moment change the course of his life? Without sounding too Hollywood mobster movie-ish, I feel that he was on a job that went wrong. It went south. I feel that his life was threatened. I feel that it was a punishment of sorts. I feel that I'm seeing a lot of like pummeling of his body. And again, I feel this closed head injury. So I was just talking about that in the missing years. But I am also seeing that there was another traumatic experience. I see his body being pummeled, him being threatened, him witnessing something that was really challenging for him to comprehend, to accept. It feels like okay, so I want to issue a trigger warning here for anyone who is super sensitive. I'm about to give a little bit of graphic information. Please skip forward. I would say 30 seconds to be safe. What I'm being shown here is he witnessed a friend of his being skinned and being skinned alive. And this was enough of a trauma. And it was basically, you're not doing what we want you to do. If you continue to behave in this manner, or you continue, this too will be you. It was a punishment. And he was pummeled, and I see him being put in the ground in a shaft of some kind. And I'm seeing sort of, it feels like a hot area. And I'm seeing it's an open grate where the sun is just beating down. I'm sorry, not the sun. I'm seeing heat lamps that were basically monitored. Heat lamps being placed over this grate. So he just had constant light and heat coming down on him. I keep seeing it's like he felt like he was in a box. This was not a big space. And he was kept in there, I'm seeing, for approximately 2 weeks. And then he was removed, and I see him. He wasn't deposited at the Burger King, but he was deposited approximately a block from the Burger King. I'm seeing some kind of a motel, the back of a motel, not an alley per se, but where the garbage bins are. So the back of a motel, and I see him wandering, walking. I see that he was dropped at night. I'm hearing about 3:30 in the morning. He was dropped off. And when he was discovered in the Burger King, he was definitely very disoriented. He was dissociated. The amnesia is real. He did not remember. He did not recall at that time. I feel also, I don't know if they said this in the report, but he was very emaciated. He had not had a lot of food. I feel like they would splash water down when he was in that hole with all of that heat lamps being on him. So he would get water, but it's not even like he would get a cup of water or a bottle of water. It feels like they would literally just pour sort of buckets of water down, and he would have to drink the water in that regard, the water off his body, the water off of the floor. Okay. Oof. William Powell consistently remembered his birthday. He remembered Colorado. He remembered restaurants where he had worked and general knowledge. Yet he claimed he could not remember his own identity, family, or how he came to Georgia. Medical professionals disagreed over whether his memory loss was genuine. So, was William Powell's memory loss genuine? And what does his very specific pattern of remembered versus forgotten memories reveal about what was really happening? I kind of tapped into this already. I feel like he did have legitimate, genuine amnesia after they found him at the Burger King in the parking lot. But I do feel that over the course of the following months and years, memories did come back to him. I'm also seeing that there was someone that he had associated with previously had come and kind of made a surreptitious visit. Did not make it really known, very subtle in the way that they approached, like just sidling up to him at a coffee shop kind of thing and just striking up a conversation. But I do feel that his memories were coming back. They were coming back in snapshots, in hunks and chunks. But I do feel that it's one of those things where he would get a little flash, he would pull on the thread of that memory, and then something would open up. And I feel like as he started to remember certain things, he realized this is actually not going to benefit me, to acknowledge that I have these memories. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And I feel that that's exactly what was going on with him. And some of that was self-preservation because of the traumatic experience he went through and the types of people that he was associating with at the time. So I feel that he knows at this point now, I feel that he knows very clearly what had sort of transpired. But he recognizes that it's not in his best interest to acknowledge that. And I feel that that's also why he disappeared as well, that he did not want to be in the spotlight while he was going to be put in the spotlight. Self-preservation. When genetic genealogy identified William Powell in 2015, many people expected the mystery to end. Instead, finding his name raised even more questions about the life he had lived and the identity he may have left behind. Why did discovering William Powell's identity deepen the mystery rather than resolve it? And what does this reveal about identity, memory, and the stories we tell ourselves to survive? He's a complicated man. He lived a complicated life. Again, I feel like even before he left his home state of Indiana, he was living a complicated life. I want to say he was a bit of a conflicted individual, not someone that wanted to make something of himself through his own blood, sweat, and tears, was looking to take things from other people. That was his sort of mode of acquiring. And I feel that he really just decided to go rogue. So why did this deepen the mystery rather than resolve it? Because he was an individual who lived off the grid. He's an individual, again, who's, morally ambiguous, chose to live under the radar, live off the grid, knew how to do that, and was actually quite good at it. So, what does it reveal about his identity, memory, and the stories we tell ourselves to survive? I feel like I've already kind of tapped into that. He was a man that was willing to do things, criminal acts for money, and I'm not going to comment on all of the different types of crimes that he was involved in. I do feel there was an escalation, but I do see that it started with, petty theft, break-ins where, you're being paid to take something that, maybe someone stole from someone else. So they're not actually going to involve the police in that. Because, that would call them out for it. They'd have to explain why they had that stolen piece of property or, whatever the case may be. So this is someone who lived on the seedier side of life and was content to do so. Okay, the 2026 documentary suggests William Powell may have concealed significant parts of his past. Those theories remain unproven, and no public evidence has linked him to the violent crimes explored in the series. So I don't know what those particular violent crimes were. I know they did mention murder and things of that nature. Like I said, I'm not tapping into that so much, but it would not surprise me if he was moving into that, if he escalated into those types of crimes, because as far as he was concerned, he would pretty much do anything for money. And as long as he, continued to live that sort of vagabond life, that the indigent life, he was getting paid to do what he needed to do. And so, the arrangement was mutually beneficial. So, what, if anything, was William Powell truly hiding? And what misconception has prevented people from understanding his story more clearly? Well, he's cagey. I feel like he learned very quickly that he could milk sympathy, he could milk support from people who really believed that he did not know who he was. And as I've said before, there was a time when he really didn't know, and that was very scary to him. But as the memories started to come back and he realized that, he realized who he was, and he realized that sharing that information would not only put him in danger, but it would also maybe incriminate him in some things that he just did not want to deal with. He kind of doubled down on this not knowing, not knowing who he was and playing into a lot of that. And it served his purpose. And again, I feel that he was very motivated by money. So, when they're doing a documentary on him and, there's potential for him to make some money, I feel like he went along with it in order to continue to get the people who've been supporting him this whole time to believe in his innocence, to believe in his stories. He went along with it until it started to come out that, this might reveal a little more than what I would like to reveal about myself. And that is why he disappeared. And because he has gone underground and lived most of his life underground anyway, he knew exactly how to do it. So he's cagey. He knows how to disappear. He knows how to live under the radar. And that's why this case is so fascinating. And that's why it's so challenging to, lose a person, find a person, lose a person, find a person, and lose a person again, and have his identity and still have no idea of who this person was. Wow. So there's no verified alternate identity that has been publicly established, and it is unclear whether he is intentionally avoiding attention, living quietly under his legal name, or experiencing housing instability. I feel that he's just choosing to live underground, and he's got the money to do so. Wow, guys. Okay, what an interesting case. So every episode of Black Feather Crime is created with deep respect for the victims, their loved ones, and everyone still searching for answers. My intention is never, ever sensationalism. It's understanding, it's truth, it's helping wherever I can. If something I've shared today sparks a new perspective or helps move a case forward, then this work has served its purpose. And if anyone in law enforcement feels that something I've shared could be helpful, I would be honored to assist in any way I can. Until we meet again, hug your loved ones, be fully present with what's here now, because now is all we truly have. Remember, curiosity gets us in the door, clarity helps us understand what we're seeing, and courage is what we do with what we've learned. Until I see you for another episode of Black Feather Crime, sending lots of love and support. We'll see you on the flip side, and transform well.